What's up, guys? It's Julian here today. I'm going to be showing you the much requested how to make Black Book like Chris Lake, Chris Lorenzo, Green Velvet, that style of house music. As usual, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything from this video that you just heard in the intro is available right at the top of the description on my website. Definitely go grab this. I don't make a whole lot just off of YouTube, but with these sample packs and templates, I'm able to keep bringing you guys new videos like this every single day. So yeah, thank you so much for the support, guys. Link is at the top of the description. Let's dive in. So we're at 127 BPM, actually a little bit faster for tech house, but I think it works really well with the style, with the more like kind of modern house. I think these guys really ushered in a lot of the stuff that's being done now as well, including the faster tempo, so I wanted to note that. Now, the first thing I'm going to show you here is going to actually be the low end groove. So you can hear it's a pretty simple, like, you know, just a nice punchy kick. And then we have this bass line. So here's the notes. It's just made, it's in the key of A, so it's just 3 notes. It's just our root note, our minor third, because we're in A minor, so C, and then the 4th. So, yeah, when you're writing these kind of bass lines, I've talked about this a lot before, you know, you really don't want to use that many notes. Like, it can seem like you want to go all over the place. It's really like pick 2 or 3 notes and make a complex groove with very few notes. And really not even that complex of a groove, right? But one thing you'll notice here is sort of like call and response. We have like don 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 don. Right, that don 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 don. Really, that's what matters. The notes are obviously very simple, but it's like the dynamic between these 2 parts. You have your call and then the response. That's really what makes it up. You know, the notes are very simple. The sound is very simple. But you can make those, you can have all of those things and still kind of be like, well, I did it simple, Julian. Why is it not working? And that's it. That's that last step, I think, is just putting together the call and response element. And again, all that comes down to is just come up with a call groove. Like, I'll make a new bass line here. And I'll even show you, like, okay, so, for example, here, we could do, like, so that's going to be the call. And that's the response. There we go. There's a whole other one. So it's not actually that hard, but it's really that dynamic between the 2 halves of the bass line than it is the notes. Again, notes are very simple. Same thing, like sound is really simple, right? This is just made with some FM. So we have sine waves. And then you can see this third one here actually just adds a little bit of punch. You can see it's got a really, really short envelope. And see, if I take that out, you don't get as much of like a punch on the sound and it doesn't stand out as much. So that's doing that. We also have a little bit of a pitch envelope. And then we're just cutting out a bit of space at 100 hertz, boosting the bass a little bit. And then just side chaining it to the kick. And then the last element of the low end groove is this little kick here. Which sounds pretty, obviously on its own, it's just like one hit. Right, it's just that little doo, doo, at the end of, not every 2 bars, but like, if this is a 4-bar pattern, the end of the first 2 bars, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that's just adding a little bit more like groove in there. I think just having that one little hit that's just doo. Right, like, because you have your bass line, you have your kick, they're grooving. And that's like the more like steady. Then you have this thing which is going to come in and just pop up. And I think it's that like dynamic there. And the actual sound for that is pretty simple. So that's a kick. But then I put it through a bandpass filter here. And then you can see I've also got this amp here. Also, it's not just the fact that this is playing there, it's also like how it fits in with the rest of the groove, right? Like the bass line goes do-no-no. So the second the bass line stops, that's when you hear this. And that's another thing. It's kind of like what I was saying with the bass line before. It's like, yeah, obviously, okay, you make your little kick sound, you know, you band pass it, you put it through the amp, all that. It's still, you need to know where to put it. And I think that's the key, is have a bass line where it's going to be steadily going, and then it kind of ends. like there, and that's where you're gonna have that little hit there. So yeah, and then that's the low end groove. And the reason why I'm making such a big emphasis on that is, these types of tracks are very simple, right? Like, we really don't have that much else going on. So when you're making this, just start with this kick and bass. Really try to get that solid. Try to create something exciting that's still simple in there, because so much of what you're hearing in the track is really just like kick and bass. Like, if you could see, like a graph that showed like how much each element is important in this track, the kick and the bass would be like way up here, and then all the other stuff will be down here. So you really want to get that hammered out first. Then we have the drums. So yeah, you can hear, again, very simple stuff. Like, it's just this nice clap. Now, I will say the actual clap sample here, I think, matters more. It's like this more like, it's not like that very like crunchy kind of 909 clap or 808 clap that you hear a lot. It's a very like mid-rangey, almost like a Lin drum or something like that. And then you just hear that on the kick. And I think that's actually a big part of the groove. So you want to make sure that you're getting the right sample too, because you could take a 909 clap and process it all day, and it's still just never going to fit as well as the sample that just works right off the bat like that. We also have the hi-hat, which is 2 layers. So we've got this one and this one. So you can hear one that's like a ch in the mid-range, and then one that's like a tss in the high end. Really, with layering, you want it to sound kind of like you can't even tell there's layering happening. Like, you're not listening to this and going, oh yeah, there's one hi-hat that's like ch and one that's tss. It's just, they come together to make one full thing. And they're also really good on their own too. Like, you gotta keep in mind, you can't just layer together 2 crappy sounds to make a good sound. It's like 2 wrongs don't make a right, You have to have 2 very high quality hi-hats, and then those are going to layer together based on what each one of them does in the frequency spectrum, and that's what's going to create one really good sound. It's very simple. It gets lost a lot though. It's like, you can't just use like, kind of like some okay samples and then layer them together and then go, oh yeah, that's going to make a good sample. No, like, you have to start from something good. It's like if you have a burger, right? You could get the finest gourmet chef in the world to do everything on the burger, cook it, do all the fancy little stuff. But if you have very cheap quality meat, it's not going to be a very good burger. I don't care how good the chef is that comes in, puts like golden garlic flakes on it or whatever you want to say. It's still going to be cheap meat, right? Same thing here. So you really want to keep that in mind, You're not just going to get 2 crappy samples, put them together and make one good sample. Just focus on a few good samples. And then the last drums down here are actually just these. So this is just something very small. It's just these 3 little percussion sounds. It's just this little groove that comes in. And yeah, because with this style, I've noticed these guys really don't use a lot of percussion in their tracks, right? It's really just that steady. I think it's having the hi-hat, the clap, and the kick, and then listening to the bass line in between those things without a lot of percussion to mess it up. But you still want something. I think if you just really only do kick, clap, and hi-hat, and then bass line, it's going to get a little bit boring. So this just comes in, and it's not something that's always happening, but when you hear it, it adds that what it needs to add to the beat, and then it's good. And also, you can hear this kind of playing off of that kick, too. Right? Like, that's all kind of like one little groove there. You got to keep in mind, it's not just each of these on their own. They're also all fitting together to create different little grooves, too. And what you can do is, like, okay, so for example, here, when I made this, I already started with the kick and the bass and then that second kick. So, obviously, you're not going to make this, like, if whatever you're starting with, it's kind of like chicken versus the egg, right? It's like, you're not going to start with this knowing where everything else is going to go. But once you have that, then when you're making everything else, you can go and be like, all right, this is going to fit what I already did, rather than trying to make it do all this different new stuff. And yeah. So then, the next thing down here would be all of these sounds. So these are the sounds that you hear over top of your main group. Because when you hear the style of house, obviously it's very much based on that just repetitive kick and bass and drums. But if you only have that stuff, like let's say you made a track that was literally just like this for the whole 5 or 6 minutes. You know, it would get really boring, right? So that's where all this other stuff comes in. Just having these different things that can come in and out over top of that, but still be like fitting into it, right? So the first one here is this old school stab. You know, kind of more like a rave, like 90s style stab. Just going through a really short reverb. I think the reverb sounds good on this, and I actually hear reverb on a lot of these, but you gotta make sure you make it a short reverb, because if you do a really long reverb, it's gonna be really weird in the mix. But if you have that short little like and then it's still like ringing out a little bit, that's what you want, right? Just not so much to where it's like gonna take over the whole track. And then we have a high pass filter. We have these two, which are actually pretty similar, and they sound like this. So these are like the zap sounds that you hear in a lot of these tracks. And the way that you make these is actually pretty simple. It's using pitch envelopes and then also LFOs on the pitch of the sound. So basically what we're doing here, as you can see, it's just like an operator patch for the first one. We have a sine wave. It's that sine 8. And then, so I have the pitch envelope. So you're already getting like a pew, like that. But then on top of that, not only is there one going pew, then there's also this LFO here, where you can see I have, that is a saw down on 16th notes, and that's on the pitch as well. So now you're getting do-do-do, like that, like straight 16th notes. And then what's happening here is I'm automating the amount of that LFO, but then also what you don't realize is that with the pitch envelope, that's also on the LFO, meaning as that pitch, the same way the pitch is going up and down, the speed of the LFO is also going down. So that's why you get that. If I turn off this little button right here where it says LFO, see, it's the same speed. So that's very important for getting the effect. And that's also just an operator thing, because operator has the pitch envelope mapped to the LFO. And then we just have high pass filter on that. And then for this one, so this is actually based on that last patch. And you can see, yeah, it's a sine wave, the same sine 8, but I used another sine wave on top of it. And then, yeah, so same deal this time. So we've got no pitch envelope, but then what's happening is I'm automating the amount of the LFO as well as the rate. So you're getting like, kind of like that same effect where the pitch envelope was changing the LFO, but yeah. So again, just basically creating the zap sound and then doing little automations and little movements that bring it to life. And then the last of these sounds down here is going to be this brass stab. So yeah, this is just like a brass sample. I'll play it for you. Just like that. And almost like a trap brass, right? And then you can see, so it's just going through a short reverb. Again, very short reverb is good, but if it's too long, it'll get in the way. But then we're actually doing multi-band distortion on this. So this is a really good way to take these and kind of bring them to the next level. Because when I had this just on its own, it's like a little bit too, it just doesn't quite fit into the track, I felt like. So this little audio effect right here with some multi-band distortion, you can see we've got the lows, have nothing on them. Mids, we got a little bit of this rock amp. It's just being blended in there. And then on the highs, we have this overdrive. And then that just adds that little like bit of flavor on top. And the secret here is the dry wet. You're going to make sure you're always blending these distortions. You don't want it to just be 100%. But yeah, this really adds a lot to this. Again, without it. And then with it. And then we also have a compressor, just side chaining it to the kick. And that is it for the brass stab. And yeah, so that's gonna be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get this full template, the project file, samples, MIDI, presets, literally all of it is available right at the top of the description on my website. Definitely go grab that. It really helps support me. Plus, this is a really solid house template. It'll help you take your tracks to the next level. You can use this just as like your basic like house template for making a bunch of different tracks, right? There's a ton of value and use to get out of these, so definitely go grab this. Link is at the top of the description. Don't sleep. Thank you so much for all the support, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.